Welcome to the open source, do-it-yourself, Tadpole tilting cargo trike project. We've been making a Tadpole trike via an iterative process. And we reached the point where it's great to ride. Nevertheless, there are always things to improve. And I believe this iteration will be a giant leap forward. In this video, I'll show you the original aluminum bike with the mid-drive, the build jig, frame extension and cable steering, while explaining the build from the drawings, which I'm sharing in editable format. Then I'll show the rest of the design, which is still in draft, and share some of the decisions about the geometry and what I'm working on. You are welcome to criticize and suggest options. This project's improvements have been driven by your help. Alright, let's get started. This is the bike that I'm using, aluminum frame with mid-drive, and I got it second-hand. And the first thing that I do is to build a frame to support the bike in the position that I want to build the extension and all of the mechanics of the cargo trike. So I support the rear and the middle so that I can remove the front wheel, and then I go on to build the support for the extension. The thing that I'm gonna do is to remove the original head tube and shape the frame so that it can take the new head tube. It's gonna be with an angle of 75 degrees, so I just draw that in. Don't forget your safety equipment if you're using an angle grinder, and go right in. Some more cutting, and it's finally out. Okay, it's out. Now I just need to shape this to accept the new head tube. To shape this, I'm using a tube with 60 millimeters outside diameter, which will be the diameter of the head tube. So I'll sand it into shape with the diameter of the tube it's gonna take here. Alright, I've been grinding for a few hours now, and well, I'm almost there. So I'm gonna leave it as it is until I have the rest of the frame. I'm gonna prep this part for welding, so I'm gonna remove the paint of this bit. Alright, so the first thing that we're gonna do is the head tube. And what we need for this is to make two plates that go on each end that will be made to receive the bearing cups. Let's make those. So I'm grabbing a piece of aluminium and making two discs out of it. I use standard tools to make a disc with an external diameter of 60 and an internal diameter of 44 millimeters. So there's the disc. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit and trying it out with the bearing cup. The bearing cup accepts the bearing and fits into this disc that I just made, and this disc goes into the tube of the head tube. So just weld that disc in. By the way, TIG welding is a revelation. So I just finished my first ever aluminium part welded. Well, I've been training before, of course, but this is the first part that I have the courage to commit to. And even though it's not super nice, I'm happy about how it worked out. Alright, let's continue. clean it up a little bit, and then put in the bearing cups. It's just so nice to be able to work outside with the good weather. One bearing cup, two bearing cups, and now it's time to work in the shaft, the part that goes inside the head tube, connects the steering bar to the bottom bit. So the headset that I'm using is for a fork with a top of 28.6 millimeters, which is an inch and an eighth, and the bottom of 30 millimeters. So instead of sort of making a tube that has two dimensions, what I'm going to do is cut this tube from this fork. It's a cheap fork that came with the bike, so I guess that's alright to reuse it. And then I'll extend it with using this 25 millimeter tube inside, because it fits just right inside. Alright, so let's take this apart. Alright, so this has been cut in half, and now I can extend it to any length that I want with this tube with an outer diameter of 25 millimeters. So I'm gonna weld the bottom of the fork to the extension tube by making a hole in it and then fitting it in, and then I'm gonna weld through the hole. I also need this ring that I forgot, another disc that will hold the crown race in place. And after welding the tube, I put it there, then I weld that as well. It's the bottom that holds the crown race. And now I fit the top part of the fork, and here we have a whole shaft. Alright, so I'm gonna assemble the whole steering just to see how it works. First of all, we fit this part in the bottom, which is the crown race. And it is a split ring, so it fits there snug. And now I'm gonna fit there the bottom bearing. Alright. And now I'm ready to fit this into the head tube, which will be just at the bearing cup. So there it is. We put the bearing into the cup. There it goes. Then this split ring that will create a snug fit there. And then this part also has the top cap with the rubber. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And now, how this is gonna be, I have a few spacers, and then the steering. So this is how it's gonna be in the end. But yeah, it's working. Now it's time to work on the frame extension. First of all, I mark to square it, and then I use a profile to make the lines so that everything matches. Alright, now we need to notch this tube to fit here, and I 3D printed this to be able to draw a line for the notch. Like that. And I use a Dremel for this job. Aluminium is quite soft, so that's doable, but even though I use many grinding discs. And then it's done, and after some cleaning, it fits nicely. This is the tube that is gonna receive the front steering pivot, and it's 35mm outside diameter and 30 inside, and it's 6 centimeters back from the pivot point of the wheels. So the pivot point of the wheels is 2 meters from the rear axis, and 6 centimeters will make a hole here. So it's time to make that hole. So I put it in the vise and align it. Make a small hole first. And then I use a standard drill for making the 35mm hole through. And then it's done, and it's time to weld. And install the bearing cups. These have an outside wall of 30mm, which I press in with the vise. And now we'll make the shaft, just like for the head tube, we'll make the shaft for the front. And it's exactly the same way. I cut a fork and I'm extending it with a tube that fits inside of the fork. And I even welded the crown race in this one. Just trying it out with the bearing. And then I put the bearing on top as well, and this cap, which is screwed into the original fork. And it works perfectly. And it's time to put the extension in place for welding. And I weld the extension to the head tube and the head tube to the frame. Now there's this part missing, which is the reinforcement for the frame. I also 3D printed this part to help me draw the notch. And this is how it sits there. And again, I used the Dremel for notching. And after some cleaning, this fits nicely. Time to weld a little bit more. Some more cleaning. Alright, so let's start working in the steering extension. So when you turn the steering bar, this will turn over there. It will be a cable system with pulleys. There will be one pulley here and one pulley over there. So I designed these parts, and they have some complexity, a little bit too much complex for me to manufacture. And so they were 3D printed out of metal by this video sponsor, JLC PCB. So thank you very much for your support. We have many technologies. You submit the part and you get an instant quote, and they're really good. So if you wanna help out the project, check them out in the description. You also help yourself because they're really good at a good price. So yeah, let's put this in. We start with the front one, and there's this bolt to tighten the shaft. And then let's put the shaft in, but it doesn't quite fit, so I have to hammer it in. And there it is, pretty ready, and I just tighten that. Now let's go to the head tube. Again, let's put that bolt there.
quite tight as well, and I hammer that in, but this time I saved you from the hammering and tighten that in.
So the project starts becoming more exciting now as we start working on mechanical components. So let's install the headset of the front. It already has the crown race installed here, and these parts here are the bearing cups, so the parts that will hold the bearings. So first, some grease, and we start with bearing that sits here. All right, oh no, it's the other way around. The balls face the cup, and then grease and pick another bearing. Balls facing the cup, and then we put it there. All right. Now there's a seal that fits just there, top of the bearing and on top of and inside the cup. All right. Look at that. There's a counter nut, and the counter nut also has a rubber to seal it. And now let's install the headset main. In this case, I still have to fit the crown race here, so let's fit that. Here it is, it's a cone with a split ring. Fit it from the top, goes all the way to the bottom, all the way, and all right, it's a snug fit there. There's the crown race. I'll put some bearing grease on it. All right. I'm gonna also put some in the cup. Now we take, again, this headset is in the list of parts in the website. It's funny that this bearing is tapered. On one of the sides, and the tapered side goes into the cup like that. And then we fit this way. Wow. And then let's take care of that and some bearing grease in the cup. Again, this bearing is tapered, so the tapered part to the bearing cup. Yes. Then it gets this split ring there. All right. One shim, and then the top cap that also has a rubber. All right. Looking good. Let's put the steering bar. There's a bunch of spacers. It's just using the height the same as the original bike had. There it goes. The steering bar. Look at that. I'm gonna tighten this a little bit. Just a little bit. And then there's this cap in the end just to make it nice. And a rubber thingy. Alright, so now I'm gonna work on the cable guides, which are these plates, one here and one at the front. I just must say that for this design I really inspired on another maker on YouTube. It's pretty similar to what they made, so I link them in the description for credit. Thank you for that pretty good design. Now I'm working on these brackets that will guide the cables. So these two holes will be on those two slots, and these two holes will be for these two slots. And on this side, it's a little bit different. So these two holes will be for this and this slot, and then these two holes over there will be for this and that slot. Alright, so let's fabricate this in aluminium.
First, I transfer the drawing of the 3D printed part to the aluminium, and then I start drilling a hole to make the curve that will fit the frame. This is a 54mm hole, which is the width of the frame extension. And these holes, I'll have also to thread them, and the purpose of them is to have cable tensioners there. Now let's make the other plate, which is just a little bit different, and it has to fit angled at 10 degrees from the extension, 15 degrees actually. So I drill that at 15 degrees, and then I make the holes, and this needs holes of 2 diameters because one is for the cable to go through and then the other is for the sleeve to stay there. And this is how it looks. Now I take off the excess metal and I shape it a little bit to make it look nicer. And it's time to weld. Then I install the cable tensioners there on the front bracket. And it's time to put the cables. It will be 2 cables for each side, so it goes around the pulley from one side and around the pulley to the same side. 2 cables is just for safety. If one cable breaks, then, well, you have another. And then do the same on the other side. 2 cables for the other side. And the front system looks good. Now I install the sleeves. 4 sleeves, 4 cables, 4 sleeves. It's pretty much done. And then with the main tube, it's time to fasten the cable just loosely to see if it works with the bolt on each side. And I think it just looks awesome. I've been dreaming of cable steering for a while. Well, I cannot test it because the vehicle is not built, but it looks really good. So now we have the foundation for a cargo trike. We have a frame extension, 2 steering tubes, and a connection between them. Now we have to work in the front. Alright, so the front part will be with a tube that fits into the existing tube, and to this tube it will have these plates welded. The plates will hold the wishbones in an angle of 10 degrees with the horizontal, so this will be the caster angle. the wishbones, this is how I'm designing them, with ball joints to fit in the caster plates, and then another type of ball joint to fit in the kingpin or knuckle. This has an inclination which is calculated to have a 0 scrub radius, and it holds the bracket for the brake calipers. The disc brake will be together with the wheel hub, and also the knuckle will hold the spindle for the wheel hub. I'm still designing the wheel hub, so we'll talk about that at another time. So yeah, this is what I'm working on. You're welcome to comment on what you think about it.
Okay, see me next time.